The champagne tasted expensive, which made sense considering where we were. The Petrov family didn't do anything halfway, especially when it came to showing off their wealth. I stood in the corner of their sprawling suburban mansion, watching my wife Zoya glide through the crowd like she owned the place, which in a way she did. Her uncle Mikhail was the senior vice president of First National Bank, and his father, her granduncle, was the bank president. This was their world, and I was just visiting. "Porter, come here," Zoya called out, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to display me like a trophy. Except tonight, I had the distinct feeling I was more of a participation ribbon. I walked over to where she stood, with Uncle Mikhail and his wife Vera, along with the bank president himself, Gregory Petrov. 3 generations of banking royalty, all looking at me like I was something they'd found stuck to their shoe. "Everyone, this is my husband Porter," Zoya announced, her smile bright but somehow cold. "He graduated from some random university, one of those state schools." The words hit me like a slap. Some random university. I'd earned my finance degree from Indiana University, graduated summa cum laude, and built a consulting practice that most people would envy. But apparently, in the Petrov family lexicon, anything that wasn't Harvard or Yale qualified as random. Mikhail chuckled, a sound like ice clinking in a glass. "Ah, yes, Porter. Zoya showed us your resume the other day. Very interesting background." "Interesting," echoed Vera, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "What exactly do you do again? Some kind of bookkeeping?" "Financial consulting," I replied evenly, though my jaw was starting to clench. "I help high-net-worth individuals manage their portfolios and plan their estates." Gregory Petrov leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his 77 years. "High-net-worth individuals? From a state school graduate? How fascinating." The sarcasm dripped from his words like honey from a broken jar. Zoya laughed, a sound that used to make me smile, but now felt like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, Porter's very ambitious. He thinks he's going to make it big someday." "Thinks," repeated Mikhail, savoring the word. "Well, ambition is admirable, I suppose, even if it's unrealistic." I felt something twist in my chest, a mixture of anger and disappointment that was becoming all too familiar. This wasn't the first time Zoya had thrown me under the bus in front of her family, but it was definitely the most public. "You know, Zoya," Vera said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, "you're still young, still beautiful. You have options." "Options," Gregory agreed, nodding sagely. "A woman of your caliber shouldn't have to settle. There are plenty of successful men in this city who would appreciate what you bring to the table." I watched my wife's face, waiting for her to defend me, to tell her family that I wasn't just some loser she'd picked up at a bus stop. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully, as if seriously considering their advice. "You might be right," she said slowly. "I mean, Porter's sweet and all, but sometimes I wonder if I jumped into marriage too quickly. Maybe I should have waited for someone more established." The conversation continued around me, but I felt like I was underwater, watching it happen from a great distance. They talked about me like I wasn't standing right there, dissecting my career prospects and my worthiness as a husband with the casual cruelty of people who'd never had to worry about money. "The thing is," Mikhail was saying, "banking is about relationships, about trust, about knowing that the person you're dealing with has the background and connections to understand how things really work. No offense, Porter, but state school graduates just don't move in those circles." "None taken," I managed, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Zoya placed her hand on my arm, a gesture that might have looked affectionate to an outside observer, but I could feel the coldness in her touch, the way she was already pulling away. "Porter understands," she said. "Don't you, honey? You understand that sometimes people outgrow each other, that what seems permanent might actually be temporary." Temporary. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to catch. I looked around the room, taking in the expensive artwork, the crystal chandeliers, the perfectly dressed guests who all seemed to be watching our little drama unfold. These people lived in a world where everything had a price tag, where relationships were investments and marriages were mergers. And apparently, I was a bad investment. "You know what?" I said, my voice cutting through their laughter. "I think you're absolutely right." The conversation stopped. 4 pairs of eyes turned to look at me with surprise. "I'm sorry," Vera said. "I said you're right. About relationships, about trust, about knowing who you're really dealing with." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. "Speaking of which, I just remembered something I need to take care of." I opened my banking app and scrolled to my account at First National, the account I'd opened when Zoya and I got married, the one where I kept my emergency fund and most of my liquid assets, the account that currently held $7,342,816. "Mikhail," I said, looking up from my phone, "since you're here, maybe you can help me with something. I need to close my account with your bank." He blinked, clearly caught off guard by the sudden change of subject. "Close your account? Why would you want to do that?" "Well, like you said, it's all about relationships and trust. And I'm starting to think that maybe First National isn't the right fit for me anymore." Zoya frowned. "Porter, what are you talking about? You barely have any money in that account anyway." Gregory Petrov chuckled. "Yes, I'm sure we can survive the loss of your checking account balance, Mr. Kellor." "Oh, it's not a checking account," I said, still looking at my phone. "It's a high-yield savings account, and you're right, losing a customer is never ideal, even when the balance is relatively modest." "How modest are we talking?" Mikhail asked, his tone suggesting he was humoring me. I looked up and smiled. $7,342,816, as of this afternoon. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. 4 faces stared at me with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to something that might have been panic. "7 million?" Zoya whispered. "Give or take," I confirmed. "I know it's not much by your family's standards, but it's what I've managed to save up over the years. You know, from my state school education and my unrealistic ambitions." Gregory Petrov's face had gone pale. "You're joking." "Not at all. Would you like to see?" I turned my phone around so they could see the screen. The account balance was clearly visible, along with my name and account number. Mikhail grabbed the phone from my hand, his eyes scanning the screen frantically. This can't be right." "Oh, it's right," I assured him. "I've been very fortunate with my investments over the years. Turns out those high net worth clients I mentioned actually exist, and they pay very well for good advice." Vera was staring at the phone like it was a snake that might bite her. $7 million? 7.3, actually, but who's counting? I took my phone back and started navigating through the app. "Now, about closing that account. I assume I can do that right here, right now? I mean, you are senior management." "Wait," Zoya said quickly. "Porter, let's not be hasty. Maybe we should talk about this privately." "Why?" "A minute ago you were telling everyone how temporary our marriage is, how I'm not established enough for someone of your caliber. I figure the least I can do is take my unworthy money somewhere it might be more appreciated." Gregory Petrov stepped forward, his demeanor completely changed. "Now, Mr. Kellor, let's not make any rash decisions. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding at all," I replied. "You've been very clear about what you think of me, and Zoya's been very clear about what she thinks of our marriage. So I'm just taking your advice and making some changes." I pulled out a pen from my jacket pocket and looked around. "I don't suppose anyone has the account closure forms handy? No? Well, I guess I'll have to do this the modern way." I opened the transfer function on my app, and began setting up a wire transfer. $7,342,816 from First National Bank to my account at Chicago Trust, a private banking institution that specialized in high-net-worth clients. "Porter, stop," Zoya said, her voice rising. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I? You just told your entire family that I'm a temporary husband who isn't good enough for you. Your uncle just explained that state school graduates don't move in the right circles. Your grand-uncle just mocked my career and my prospects. I'm simply responding to market feedback." Mikhail was sweating now, despite the air conditioning. "Mr. Kellor, please, let's discuss this rationally. There's no need to move your assets over a simple misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said, continuing to fill out the transfer form. "It's clarity. You've all been very clear about where I stand in this family, and I'm being very clear about where my money stands with your bank." I entered my authentication code and hit the transfer button. The app processed for a moment, then displayed a confirmation screen. Transfer initiated. Funds would be available in the receiving account within 1 business day. "There," I said, showing them the confirmation. "All done. $7.3 million transferred to a bank that actually appreciates my business." The silence was deafening. Gregory Petrov looked like he might faint. Mikhail was staring at my phone screen with the expression of a man watching his house burn down. Vera had gone completely white, and Zoya? Zoya was looking at me like she'd never seen me before. "You had $7 million, she said slowly, "and you never told me?" "You never asked," I replied. "Besides, according to you, I'm just a temporary husband with unrealistic ambitions. Why would someone like that have any real money?" I slipped my phone back into my pocket and straightened my tie. "Well, this has been illuminating. Thank you all for the honest feedback about my worth as a person and a spouse. It's been very educational." I turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at them. "Oh, and Zoya? When you find that upgrade you're looking for, make sure you ask to see his bank statements first. You might be surprised what you learn." I walked out of that mansion with my head held high, leaving behind 4 people who suddenly understood that they'd just made the most expensive mistake of their lives. $7 million was a lot of money, even for a family of bankers. But more than that, they'd lost something much more valuable: the illusion that they were better than everyone else. As I got into my car and drove away, I couldn't help but smile. They'd called me temporary, like I was some kind of placeholder until someone better came along. But temporary things have a way of becoming permanent when you're not paying attention, and permanent things have a way of disappearing when you take them for granted. The game was just beginning, and I had a feeling that before it was over, they were going to learn exactly how dangerous a temporary husband could be. The next morning, I woke up in my downtown apartment, a place I'd been renting for the past 6 months as an office space, but which was about to become much more important. Zoya didn't know about it, of course. There were a lot of things Zoya didn't know about me, as last night had made abundantly clear. My phone had been buzzing since 6 a.m. 17 missed calls from Zoya, 12 from Mikhail, and even 3 from Gregory Petrov himself. The bank president calling me directly. That was rich. I made coffee and checked my Chicago Trust account. The transfer had gone through perfectly. $7.3 million, sitting safely in an institution that actually valued my business. The account manager there, Patricia Chen, had called me personally to confirm the deposit and to see if there was anything else they could do for me. That was the difference between real private banking and the small-town royalty act that the Petrovs put on. Chicago Trust didn't care where I went to school. They cared about my money and my business, which was exactly how it should be. My phone rang again. Zoya, for the 18th time. I answered. "Good morning?" "Porter, thank goodness. Where are you? I've been calling all night." "I'm at my office, working. Doing those unrealistic, ambitious things that state school graduates do." There was a pause. "Porter, About last night, I think there might have been some miscommunication. Really? What part was miscommunicated? The part where you called me temporary, or the part where your family suggested you upgrade to a better husband? They didn't mean it like that. You know how Uncle Mikhail gets when he's been drinking. And Grandfather Gregory, he's old-fashioned. He doesn't understand modern relationships. I almost laughed. Modern relationships? Zoya, you stood there and agreed with them. You nodded when they said you should find someone more established. You called our marriage temporary. I was trying to keep the peace. You know how important family harmony is to me. Family harmony. Right. I took a sip of my coffee and looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. Tell me something, Zoya. How long have you been thinking of me as temporary? Another pause, longer this time. That's not... Porter, you're being dramatic. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've been pretty clear about your feelings, and your family's been pretty clear about theirs, so I'm just responding accordingly. By moving $7 million, Porter, that's insane. Uncle Mikhail is beside himself. The bank is in chaos. Grandfather Gregory is talking about calling the board of directors. Good. Maybe they'll learn something about customer service. This isn't a joke. Do you have any idea what you've done? I set down my coffee cup and leaned back in my chair. I moved my money from a bank where I wasn't respected to a bank where I am. That's called capitalism, Zoya. I thought your family would appreciate that. You're punishing them for a misunderstanding. I'm protecting my assets from people who don't value me or my business. There's a difference. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, could practically feel her trying to figure out how to spin this situation back in her favor. Porter, come home. Let's talk about this face to face. Home? I repeated. You mean the house where you've been planning to replace me? Where you've been telling your friends that I'm not good enough for you? That home? I never said that. Didn't you? Because I've been hearing some interesting stories from people around town. Stories about how you've been describing our marriage to your social circle. Stories about how you've been looking for an upgrade. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Who told you that? She asked finally. Does it matter? The point is that you've been shopping around while pretending to be a devoted wife. So forgive me if I'm not particularly interested in coming home to discuss our future. Porter, please. I know things have been difficult between us lately, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend that you haven't been planning your exit strategy for months? Pretend that your family doesn't think I'm beneath you? Pretend that you haven't been telling people our marriage is temporary? I stood up and walked to the window. Here's the thing, Zoya. You're right. Our marriage is temporary. But so is everything else. Your family's position at the bank, your social status, your financial security. All of it can change in an instant. What's that supposed to mean? It means that actions have consequences. You and your family decided to treat me like I was worthless, so I decided to show you exactly what worthless looks like. By moving your money? That's childish, Porter. No, that's business, and it's just the beginning. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. The beginning of what? Of showing you and your family what happens when you underestimate someone. When you assume that because someone doesn't come from old money, they don't have any money at all. When you mistake quiet for weak. Porter, you're scaring me. Good. Maybe now you'll start taking me seriously. I hung up the phone and immediately called Patricia Chen at Chicago Trust. Mr. Kellor, good morning. How can I help you today? Patricia, I'm going to need to make some additional arrangements. I have a feeling my financial situation is about to become more complicated. Of course. What do you need? I need to set up a trust, something that will protect my assets in case of divorce proceedings, and I need to move some additional funds from other accounts. Certainly. How much are we talking about? I pulled up my investment portfolio on my computer. Between my various accounts, stock holdings, and real estate investments, I was looking at just over $12 million in total assets. About $5 million more to start. And Patricia, I need this done today. Consider it done, Mr. Kellor. I'll have the paperwork ready within the hour. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and thought about the conversation with Zoya. She was scared, which meant she was finally starting to understand that she'd made a mistake. But it was too late for apologies and explanations. Too late for marriage counseling and second chances. She'd called me temporary. Well, temporary worked both ways. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Mikhail Petrov. We need to talk. The bank is prepared to offer you a significant incentive to return your business to First National. I typed back. How significant? Premium rates on all accounts. Dedicated relationship manager. Access to exclusive investment opportunities. Whatever it takes. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Not interested, but thank you for the offer. Mr. Kellor, please reconsider. Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot last night. I'd like the opportunity to make things right. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, You had that opportunity last night. You chose to mock my education and suggest my wife find a replacement. I'm simply taking your advice and making some replacements of my own. My phone rang immediately. Mikhail. Mr. Kellor, please don't hang up. I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Mikhail. You were very clear about what you think of me, and I'm being very clear about what I think of your bank. What can I do to change your mind? I looked out at the city skyline and smiled. You can't, but you can do me a favor. Anything. You can explain to your father and your niece exactly how much money they just cost your bank. 7.3 million in deposits, plus whatever additional business I might have brought you over the years. Add it up, Mikhail. What's that worth to a regional bank like First National? I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. And while you're doing that math, I continued, you might want to think about what else you don't know about me. What other assumptions you've made. What other mistakes you might have made. What do you mean? I mean that if you think I'm just going to quietly disappear and let you all get back to your comfortable little lives, you're even more wrong about me than you were last night. I hung up and immediately started making more calls. To my investment advisor, to my real estate attorney, to my accountant. If Zoya and her family wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I had all the pieces in place. By the end of the day, I had moved over $10 million out of accounts that Zoya had access to and into trusts and investments that she couldn't touch. I had changed all my passwords, updated all my beneficiaries, and secured all my assets. If she wanted a divorce, she was welcome to it. But she wasn't going to get rich in the process. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from Zoya. Porter, I know you're angry, but this has gone far enough. Come home so we can talk like adults. I typed back, adults don't publicly humiliate their spouses at family parties. Adults don't call their marriages temporary. Adults don't shop for upgrades while pretending to be committed. I never shopped for an upgrade. Didn't you? Then explain the text messages on your phone with Marcus Radek. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before she finally responded. How do you know about that? I didn't answer. Let her wonder. Let her worry about what else I might know, what else I might have discovered while she was busy treating me like an embarrassment. The truth was, I'd found her burner phone 2 weeks ago, hidden in her jewelry box. The text messages with Marcus, the IT manager at the bank, were enlightening. Dinner plans, weekend getaways, and plenty of commentary about how I was holding her back from the life she deserved. But I hadn't confronted her then. I'd waited. I'd planned. I'd prepared. And now, finally, it was time to show Zoya and her family exactly what happened when you underestimated a temporary husband. The game was just getting started. 3 days passed without any contact from Zoya or her family. 3 days of blissful silence while I put the final pieces of my plan into place. I spent my time in my downtown apartment, which was quickly becoming my permanent residence, and worked on reorganizing my entire financial life. Patricia Chen at Chicago Trust had been incredibly helpful. Not only had she processed all my transfers smoothly, but she'd also introduced me to their estate planning team and their private investment advisors. It turned out that $12 million opened a lot of doors, even at an institution that regularly dealt with much larger fortunes. On Thursday morning, my phone finally rang. It was my lawyer, David Morrison. "Porter, I've got some interesting news for you." "Good interesting or bad interesting?" "That depends on your perspective. Zoya filed for divorce yesterday." I wasn't surprised, but hearing it officially still felt like a punch to the gut. "What are the grounds?" "Irreconcilable differences, primarily. But there are some additional claims that I think you should know about." "Such as?" "She's claiming that you've been hiding assets from her, that you've been secretive about your finances throughout the marriage, and she's asking for spousal support and a 50-50 split of all marital assets." I almost laughed. "Hiding assets? I had $7 million sitting in an account at her family's bank. How is that hiding?" "That's exactly what I told her attorney, but apparently she claims she had no idea you had that kind of money, and she's arguing that your failure to disclose it constitutes financial fraud." "That's ridiculous." "I agree. But there's more. She's also claiming that you've been emotionally distant and that you've created a hostile home environment. And Porter, she's claiming that you've been unfaithful." That stopped me cold. "Unfaithful? I've never cheated on her." "I know, but she's provided some evidence that her attorney thinks is compelling." "What kind of evidence?" "Photos of you entering and leaving an apartment downtown, credit card statements showing payments to a rental company, hotel receipts. She's painting a picture of a man who's been living a double life." I rubbed my forehead, feeling the beginning of a headache. "The apartment is my office. I've been renting it for 6 months as a workspace. There's nothing secretive about it." "Can you prove that? Do you have business records, client meetings, anything that shows legitimate business use?" "Of course I do. But David, this is insane. She's the one who's been having an affair, not me." "What do you mean?" I told him about the burner phone, about the text messages with Marcus Radek, about the weekend getaways and the dinner plans. David listened carefully, taking notes. "Do you still have access to these messages?" he asked. "No. She found the phone missing and got rid of it, but I took screenshots before I put it back." "Good. That gives us something to work with. But Porter, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay? Is there any truth to her claims about your behavior? Have you been distant? Have you been spending time away from home?" I thought about it carefully. "Yes, I've been distant, but that's because I discovered she was cheating on me and planning to leave me. As for spending time away from home, yes, I've been working more, building my business, preparing for exactly this scenario." "And the apartment?" "Is exactly what I said it is. An office. I've never brought another woman there. I've never used it for anything except work." "All right, I believe you. But we're going to need to prove all of this. And Porter, there's something else you should know." "What now?" "Zoya's attorney is Thomas Brennan." I felt my stomach drop. Thomas Brennan was one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the state. He was expensive, ruthless, and very good at what he did. He was also, coincidentally, a member of the same country club as the Petrov family. "Let me guess. The family is paying for him." "That would be my assumption. Brennan doesn't come cheap, and from what I understand, Zoya doesn't have the kind of money it takes to retain him. So they're funding her legal assault on me. It looks that way, which means this isn't just about your marriage anymore. This is about the bank, about their reputation, about getting back at you for embarrassing them." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. They really think they can destroy me. They're certainly going to try. Brennan is already making noise about subpoenaing all your financial records, investigating your business practices, looking for any angle he can use against you. Let him look. My business is completely legitimate. I'm sure it is. But Porter, You need to understand what you're up against here. This isn't just a divorce. This is war, and they have resources. So do I. I hope so, because they're not going to stop with just the divorce. Brennan is already talking about filing complaints with the state licensing board, suggesting that you might have engaged in unethical business practices. He's threatening to investigate your tax returns, your client relationships, everything. I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and sharp. They want to play dirty? Fine. Let's play dirty. Porter, I need you to stay calm and think strategically. Don't do anything rash. I'm not going to do anything rash. I'm going to do exactly what they're doing. I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to protect myself and my interests. What does that mean? It means that if they want to investigate me, I'm going to investigate them. If they want to question my business practices, I'm going to question theirs. If they want to play hardball, I'm going to show them what hardball really looks like. Porter, David, I need you to do something for me. I need you to hire a private investigator, someone good, someone discreet. What for? To look into Marcus Radek, to look into the Petrov family's business dealings, to look into anything and everything that might be useful. That's going to be expensive. I have $12 million, David. I think I can afford it. There was a pause. 12 million? I thought you said 7.3. That was just what I had in the one account. I've got investments, real estate, other holdings, 12 million total, give or take. Jesus, Porter, why didn't you tell me that before? Because it wasn't relevant before. Now it is. You're right. With that kind of money, we can fight this properly. But Porter, you need to be prepared for this to get ugly. Really ugly. It's already ugly, David. They made it ugly when they decided to treat me like garbage and then try to destroy me when I fought back. After I hung up with David, I sat in my apartment and thought about everything that had happened. A week ago, I'd been a married man with a successful business and a comfortable life. Now I was facing a divorce, potential legal challenges, and a family of bankers who apparently wanted to ruin me. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed that because I was quiet, I was weak. They'd assumed that because I didn't come from money, I didn't have money. They'd assumed that because I'd been willing to tolerate their disrespect, I would continue to tolerate it indefinitely. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Kellor, this is Marcus Radek. I think we should talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, about what? About Zoya, about the situation you're both in, about finding a solution that works for everyone. I almost deleted the message without responding, but then I had a better idea. Sure, let's talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at the Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. See you then. I set down my phone and smiled. Marcus Radek wanted to talk. Perfect, because I had a few things I wanted to say to him too. The next day, I arrived at Starbucks 15 minutes early and chose a table near the back where we could have some privacy. Marcus showed up right on time, looking nervous and overdressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He was exactly what I'd expected from his photos on social media. Tall, athletic, with the kind of carefully maintained appearance that suggested he spent a lot of time and money on his looks. The kind of man that women like Zoya found attractive, at least until they got to know him better. Porter, he said, extending his hand. Thanks for agreeing to meet. I shook his hand briefly. Marcus, have a seat. He sat down across from me and immediately started fidgeting with his coffee cup. I want you to know that I never intended for things to get this complicated. Which things are those? You know, the situation with Zoya, the divorce, all of it. I leaned back in my chair and studied his face. The situation with Zoya. Is that what we're calling it? Look, I know this is awkward, but I think we're both adults here. We can handle this maturely. Maturely, I repeated. Like adults do when they're having affairs with married women? His face flushed red. It's not like that. What's it like then? Zoya and I, We have a connection, a real connection, and she's been unhappy in her marriage for a long time. Has she? How long exactly? What do you mean? I mean, when did this connection start? When did she first tell you she was unhappy? When did you first start texting her on her secret phone? His eyes widened slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do? The burner phone she kept in her jewelry box? The weekend getaways you've been planning? The conversations about how I'm holding her back from the life she deserves? Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Porter, I think maybe we should... Should what? Should pretend that you haven't been sleeping with my wife for months? Should pretend that you haven't been helping her plan her exit strategy? Should pretend that this whole divorce isn't just a way for her to trade up to someone with better family connections? It's not about money or connections, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you and Zoya saw an opportunity to get rid of the inconvenient husband and move forward with your relationship. The only problem is that the inconvenient husband turned out to have more resources than you expected. Marcus leaned forward. Look, Porter, I came here to try to work something out. Something that could benefit all of us. I'm listening. Zoya doesn't want to hurt you. She just wants to be happy. And I think deep down, you want her to be happy too. Go on. So maybe we can find a way to make this divorce as painless as possible. Maybe you could be generous in the settlement, help her get a fresh start, and in return, maybe some of the more complicated aspects of this situation could be kept private. I stared at him for a long moment. Are you trying to blackmail me? No, that's not what I meant. I just meant that divorces can get messy, and sometimes things come out that hurt everyone involved. What kind of things? Well, for instance, Zoya mentioned that you've been acting strangely lately, spending time away from home, being secretive about your finances. That kind of thing could look bad in court. Could it? And then there are the questions about your business, about where all that money came from, about whether you've been completely honest with the IRS about your income. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that when people have complicated financial situations, sometimes there are questions, and questions can be expensive to answer, even when someone hasn't done anything wrong. I stood up slowly. Marcus, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You're telling me that if I don't give Zoya whatever she wants in the divorce, you and her family are going to try to destroy my business and my reputation. That's exactly what you're saying. You're threatening me. Porter, please sit down. Let's discuss this rationally. We're done discussing. I picked up my coffee and looked down at him. But since you wanted to talk, let me give you something to think about. You and Zoya and her family seem to think that I'm some kind of pushover who's going to roll over and let you take everything I've worked for. We don't think... You're wrong. Completely wrong. And if you want to play games with my business and my reputation, I'm more than willing to play games with yours. How do you think your bosses at the bank would feel about an IT manager who's been involved in an inappropriate relationship with the niece of a senior vice president? How do you think the board would respond to learning that you've been using bank resources to help plan someone's divorce strategy? Marcus went pale. I haven't used any bank resources. Haven't you? What about those emails you sent from your work account? What about the times you used the bank's computers to research divorce attorneys? What about the confidential financial information you accessed to help Zoya understand my accounts? I never accessed your accounts. Didn't you? Because I have reason to believe that someone at the bank has been looking at my financial information without authorization. And you're the IT manager. You have access to everything. That's not true. Isn't it? Well, I guess we'll find out when my attorney subpoenas the bank's computer records, along with your personal financial records, and your phone records, and your travel records. I leaned down so I was speaking directly into his ear. You wanted to threaten me, Marcus. Fine. But remember that threats work both ways, and I have a lot more resources than you do. I straightened up and walked toward the door. Give my regards to Zoya, and tell her that if she wants a war, she's got one. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I could feel Marcus staring at me. Good. Let him stare. Let him worry. Let him go back to Zoya and the Petrov family and tell them exactly what kind of man they were really dealing with. They'd called me temporary. They'd treated me like I was disposable. They'd assumed I would just disappear quietly when they were done with me. They were about to learn that temporary could be a very dangerous thing to be. The private investigator I hired was a woman named Sarah Mitchell, a former FBI agent who specialized in financial crimes and corporate investigations. She was expensive, thorough, and completely discreet. Within a week, she had compiled a report that was more damaging than I had dared to hope. The Petrov family has some interesting skeletons in their closet, Sarah told me as we sat in her downtown office. Nothing criminal, but definitely unethical, and potentially very embarrassing. Tell me everything. She opened a thick folder and spread several documents across her desk. Let's start with Mikhail. He's been using his position at the bank to give preferential loan rates to his friends and family members. Nothing illegal, technically, but definitely against bank policy. How preferential? We're talking about loans that should have been denied based on credit scores and income verification. Loans with rates that are significantly below market value, and in at least 3 cases, loans where the borrowers defaulted and the bank had to write off the losses. How much money are we talking about? About $2 million in bad loans over the past 5 years, all traced back to Mikhail's personal recommendations. I whistled softly. That's enough to get him fired. It gets better. Gregory Petrov, the bank president, has been using bank funds to pay for personal expenses, country club memberships, vacation homes, expensive cars, all justified as business expenses, but the documentation is questionable at best. And Vera? Vera Petrov runs a charity foundation that supposedly helps underprivileged children, but most of the money goes to administrative costs, which means salaries for Vera and her friends. Less than 20% actually reaches the children. I leaned back in my chair. This is good. But what about Marcus? Sarah smiled. Marcus is the most interesting of all. He's been embezzling money from the bank's IT budget. Small amounts, but consistent. About $50,000 over the past 2 years. Embezzling how? Fake vendor invoices. He creates bills for computer equipment and software that don't exist, then has the payments sent to accounts he controls. Very sophisticated. Very hard to detect unless you know what to look for. But you found it. I found it. And I have documentation that proves it. Bank records, account numbers, everything. I stared at the documents spread across her desk. This is enough to destroy all of them. It is. But Porter, you need to be careful about how you use this information. If you go public with it too aggressively, it could backfire. You could be accused of harassment or extortion. What do you recommend? Strategic disclosure. Use it as leverage in the divorce proceedings. Let them know you have it, but don't release it unless they force your hand. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the folder. Sarah, I need you to do one more thing for me. What's that? I need you to find out everything you can about Thomas Brennan, Zoya's attorney, his business practices, his client list, his personal life, everything. Any particular reason? He's been making threats about investigating my business and my taxes. I want to make sure he's clean before he starts throwing stones. Consider it done. That afternoon, I had a meeting with David Morrison to discuss the divorce proceedings. The discovery phase was just beginning, which meant both sides would be exchanging financial documents and other evidence. Brennan is demanding access to all your business records for the past 5 years, David told me. Bank statements, client lists, tax returns, everything. Let him have them. I've got nothing to hide. I know you don't, but he's also demanding access to your personal communications. Emails, text messages, phone records. He's looking for evidence of infidelity or financial impropriety. Again, let him look. But David, I want you to make the same demands of Zoya. I want to see her financial records, her communications, everything. That's standard in divorce proceedings. But Porter, Brennan is also making some unusual requests. He wants access to your apartment downtown. He wants to interview your clients. He wants to examine your business practices in detail. Why? He's building a case that you've been living a double life, that you've been hiding assets and income from Zoya throughout your marriage. He's trying to paint you as a dishonest businessman who can't be trusted. I thought about the folder of documents sitting in my briefcase. David, what would happen if we could prove that Zoya and her family have been engaged in unethical business practices? What kind of practices? I told him about Sarah's investigation, about the loans and the embezzlement and the charity fraud. David listened carefully, taking notes. This is explosive stuff, Porter. If this information became public, it would destroy the bank's reputation. The regulators would have to investigate. People could go to prison. But could we use it in the divorce? Absolutely. It would completely undermine their credibility. It would show that they're the ones who can't be trusted, not you. Then let's use it. Porter, are you sure about this? Once we open this door, there's no closing it. This will become a scorched earth battle. I thought about Zoya's betrayal, about the humiliation at the family party, about Marcus's threats in the coffee shop. They opened that door when they decided to try to destroy me. I'm just walking through it. All right, but we need to be smart about this. We can't just dump all this information at once. We need to use it strategically. What do you suggest? We start with a warning shot. We let Brennan know that we have information that could be damaging to his clients. We give them a chance to back down from their more aggressive tactics. And if they don't back down? Then we escalate, step by step, until they understand that they're fighting a battle they can't win. That evening, I was sitting in my apartment when my phone rang. It was Zoya. Porter, we need to talk. I thought we were talking through our attorneys. This is different. This is personal. Everything about this divorce is personal, Zoya. Please, just give me 5 minutes. There are things you don't understand. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a restaurant downtown. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table and looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. You have 5 minutes. Porter, I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed, and I understand why. Do you? Yes. And I want you to know that I never meant for things to happen this way. The situation with Marcus, it developed gradually. I didn't plan it. But you didn't stop it either. No, I didn't. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for hurting you. I studied her face, looking for some sign of genuine remorse. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want us to find a way to end this marriage without destroying each other. I don't want this to become a war. It's already a war, Zoya. Your attorney made sure of that when he started threatening to investigate my business and my taxes. That wasn't my idea. That was Uncle Mikhail and Grandfather Gregory. They're angry about the money you moved, and they want to punish you for embarrassing them. So, you're just going along with it? I'm trying to find a middle ground. I'm trying to protect both of us. I leaned forward. Protect us from what? From the things that could come out if this gets ugly. Porter, there are aspects of my family's business that you don't know about. Things that could be damaging if they became public. Such as? I can't tell you specifics, but I can tell you that if you keep pushing, if you keep fighting, people are going to get hurt, including you. I sat back and looked at her. Are you threatening me, Zoya? No, I'm warning you. There are powerful people involved in this now. People who don't like to lose. Well, here's a warning for you, I said, standing up. I don't like to lose either. And I have resources that your family doesn't know about. What kind of resources? The kind that could make your family's business problems very public very quickly. Her face went pale. What business problems? Ask your uncle about the loans he's been approving for his friends. Ask your grandfather about the bank funds he's been using for personal expenses. Ask Marcus about the IT budget discrepancies. How do you know about those things? I know about a lot of things, Zoya. And if your family wants to keep playing games with my reputation and my business, I'm going to start sharing what I know with some very interested parties. I threw a $20 bill on the table and walked toward the door. You wanted a war? Congratulations, you've got one. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could feel Zoya staring after me. Good. Let her go back to her family and tell them exactly what I'd said. Let them understand that they weren't dealing with the same quiet, accommodating man they'd been pushing around. The temporary husband was done being temporary, and he was just getting started.